I'd say it's like an actual career path nowadays, starting a personal brand. Like the same way that when I was a kid, it's like, do you want to be a firefighter or a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher? Nowadays, it's a really viable, defensible career path if you can build a personal brand.
9 months ago, you tweeted out, "My goal in life is to complete the main story so I can focus on the side quests." A lot's changed for you since then. Sitting here today, what does completing the main story mean to you now?
Yeah, so even with a lot changing, to me, the main story is, the games we play in our early 20s and like as we're going through adulthood, like how to make more money so that you can be free. We like want the bigger house, we want all the money, we want to be able to travel, we want to have like an amazing relationship, we want to get in really good shape. Those seem to be like the core games that everyone spends their entire life playing. And I've noticed the people that I look up to and respect, it seems like they've like played those games to like the fullest extent where they're in really good shape, they've taken that as far as they want, they have enough money or more money than they'll ever need, and they have incredible relationships like wives, husbands, and now they're just playing games for their own sake. They're on to the side quests now. Like, I just want to create art. I want to learn how to write music. I want to be a better writer. And it stops being about feeling inadequate, trying to hit a goal, and it starts being more about enjoying the process of the things you get to do every day. And that's what I hope to achieve in my 30s.
For sure, yeah. And you're 29 now and you've accomplished a lot. And I think, like, especially as men, we need to accomplish a lot of those barriers. For instance, like, women are kind of born with intrinsic value, I think, because they're mothers and they bring life into the world. They just have that innate value. Whereas men, we have to build ourselves up from nothing, and we have to, like, check off the money and check off the physique and the power, and kind of rise in the hierarchy that is society. And that takes a certain kind of mindset, right? And so I have a few things that I picked up from different places on the internet where you've mentioned some of these stories that I think have impacted your mindset and your belief system. And I would love to just mention a couple of key phrases and see if you can expand on them for the audience. Does that work?
Yeah, dude, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So the first one is doctors spending time on yachts.
Yeah, so when I was in my early 20s, I was complaining to my mom that I didn't have a lot of money because I was in college and I was working part time, and I didn't have enough time or like money for anything. And my mom's like, "Well, you're not a doctor on a yacht somewhere, so you're gonna have to work." And it just created so much cognitive dissonance for me. I was like, "Wait, how does that make any sense? Because if you're a doctor, wouldn't you be like doing surgery? You'd be working all day. So then, how do you spend time on a yacht?" But we have this cultural idea that there's these like rich people just hanging out on yachts all day, just doing whatever they want because they're so rich. So then, like, how does somebody get that rich, especially at a young age? And that's what like eventually led me to question everything I knew about money and business and life. And I ended up learning about investing, building businesses, and like essentially changing my entire life course because my mom gave me so much cognitive dissonance with one statement.
It took a while for me to kind of realize my parents are just human beings also, and that, like, the way that they see the world is not necessarily just the truth all the time. I have another statement that I'm going to throw out. I think it was also another moment in your life that kind of made you reevaluate your belief system, and that's Red Bulls in Dubai.
Yeah, so it's kind of a stupid, funny story. So when I went to Dubai last year in November with my good buddies like Dakota Robertson, Liam Kircher, and Spencer Steele, we were all there and we were just drinking like copious amounts of Red Bulls, like just being stupid guys. Like at first it was like, oh, we'll have a Red Bull to start the day. And then someone's like, oh, I'm just gonna have a second one. And then you start calling them like bullies, and it's like, oh, have a third bully, have a fourth. And like next thing you know, we're drinking like 4 or 5 Red Bulls a day, which is so unhealthy and just so stupid. And I got to the point where I had so much brain fog from all this caffeine and all this Red Bull. I was sitting there and I'm like, guys, I can't write. I'm gonna have to just take a day. Like I've had too much Red Bulls. And my buddy Liam goes, "Oh, really? You can't write like at all?" I'm just like, "No, I can't. Like I can't write after having caffeine." He's like, "Sounds like a belief, bro. I bet if you sat down and write, you could still write." And it was just one of those moments that I just sat there and was like, he's right. Like, no pun intended, we're talking about writing, but I'm like, he's totally right. Like, if I really needed to, I could sit down and write. Like, would it be good? Maybe not. Would it be the most optimized writing hours of my life? No. But is it a belief that I cannot sit down and write? Like, no, I could sit down and write. And that was just a moment that always stuck with me now. And having the importance, or the importance of having friends that are just going to call you out in your shit and your beliefs. So when you're falling lower than your potential, to have friends to be like, no, dude, that's not serving you. Like, you might not like it, but that's not serving you. And we need to change that. And that was a really critical moment for me to realize the importance of those friends.
Yeah, that's huge to have those people around you that will call you out, and you don't always have to have those yes men all the time. It is good to have like some of those people because you know that like if you're going through a tough time, you can just lean on someone. They'll be like, "It's all right, it's all right." But you also need the people that it doesn't matter what you're bringing to the table. Like my brother, for instance, is that for me. Like I know that if I just need someone to kick my ass into gear, like I'll just hit him up, and he's not going to beat around the bush. He's gonna be like, "Well, bro, you need to do this, this, and this." Like, what the fuck, you know? And so I definitely think it's important to have those people. So the last one that I want to throw out there, this is a little more obscure, but also just I think it probably brought some positive beliefs into your life, at least for the short term. Larger Than Life by the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, that is like my second favorite song of all time. Like, just shamelessly. I just love that
What's your
song.
first?
It's like more of a sad song, actually. It's called "Dearly Beloved" by Yoko Shimomura, I believe. It's yeah, that was my like number one favorite song. But I would say like "Larger Than Life" by Backstreet Boys, as stupid as it sounds, like I've always looked at it kind of as a theme song. I don't think I've even ever told this before, but when I was a kid, me and my cousins would actually pretend to be the Backstreet Boys, and we would like throw concerts for like my parents and my aunties and uncles and stuff. And I think that actually always had a bit of an impact on me because I listen to that song and I just get pumped up. I'm like, let's do something larger than life. Let's be larger than life. Let's serve something like bigger than us. And it's such a cheesy song to like feel that way for and get so pumped up. But like, it is one of the few songs that truly like just pumps me right up.
So you're gonna love this. So and I've never talked about this online, I don't think, but my dad was very high up at Jive Records and worked very closely with the Backstreet Boys, worked very closely with NSYNC. He actually signed Britney Spears. And
Wow.
so me and my brother used to do something very similar. We were living in New York City and we would play Backstreet Boys songs. And I don't know how old we were, 7, something like that. And we would come up with like dances in our bedroom, like coordinated dances. And we loved Backstreet Boys. If there was ever like a Backstreet Boys versus NSYNC debate, like my heart is with BSB. Like I just got to say that. So I'm putting that out there. Although I do, I do love NSYNC and Justin's a beast, but
Yeah.
yeah, totally fuck with the Backstreet Boys, dude.
Nice.
Um, so okay, so that was when we were little kids. Now we're in our 20s and 30s. Something you've talked about is eliminating unnecessary suffering in your life in this time in our life, because this is when you're setting up for the rest of your life. And that's the future years when you have the family, there's more responsibility. You want to be able to have the bandwidth to kind of like enjoy that part of your life and provide and do all those great things. You once said, do you want to do 1 to 5 years of really tough work so that the rest of your life is great? Or do you want to suffer the same problem until the day you die? So like this idea of just tackling what's in front of you, going all out so that you can set yourself up. Um, there's a lot of different types of freedom, right? That you've talked about as well. So in terms of like building a personal brand, how does that enable people to have those types of freedom to go all in and to really set themselves up for the long term?
I'd say it's like an actual career path nowadays, like starting a personal brand. Like the same way that when I was a kid, it's like, do you want to be a firefighter or a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher? I think nowadays it's a really viable, defensible career path if you can build a personal brand. Because if you can attract an audience and people care about what you have to say, they look at you as an authority and as an expert, and you can be a thought leader in some way. There's so many different points of leverage in today's world that it gives you. Like, I look at bigger brands, like the biggest, like we're talking Mr. Beast level, maybe like Emma Chamberlain, who was just a big personal brand on YouTube. And she has launched a coffee company that became like multi-million-dollar valuation, I think a couple of years ago. Or what's another one? Like Mark Rober, who's one of the biggest YouTubers with the highest, I think, like view count per video. He just released a product called Crunch Labs where he wants to help kids finds science like fun, and he wants to raise the next like we'll say generation of engineers. So it's like a subscription box service that kids are like building toys with his like YouTube videos that they're watching, and then they're playing with them to like so they can be like, wow, science is really cool, and he's like explaining the science while he's doing it. And I think about like someone who doesn't have a personal brand trying to get that product off the ground. It's like they have to pay all this money for marketing. They have to try to create awareness and attention around the product. They have to build trust. Like it's just a complete uphill battle. Where nowadays you're seeing personal brands that have been built over 1 to 5 years and have an audience going, hey, this is something that is really cool and I think would change the world. And it aligns with their audience and like who follows them, and their businesses are just skyrocketing in valuations and profits. And I do think that's the next wave of business, is not to have all this like crazy front loaded capital, but to have personal brands who have so much attention and leverage that marketing is essentially free.
Yeah, it's a great point, and there's so many examples, right? Like the ones you named, you look at like Logan Paul and KSI, and they launched like Prime, right? And now Prime is like an official drink sponsor of the UFC. And then you have like the Nelk Boys and their Happy Dad drinks, and you could, the list goes on and on. And even with this podcast, I was listening to David Senra, who's the guy who runs the Founders Podcast, and basically he is so bullish on podcasting, this idea that like if you look at Joe Rogan and the way that they built on it on the back of that platform, there are a lot of billion dollar brands that have run ads on podcasts to grow. But what about if the podcaster actually just partners directly with the business, an entrepreneur, and then it becomes like not even a sponsorship, but just kind of like integrated from day one, because podcasters have such a deep connection with their audience because you listen to them for like hours and hours. So again, it's like this personal branding combined with launching products. And that's also part of this podcast, not just for me selfishly as like trying to build my brand, but everybody that's listening to this is really trying to build a personal brand. That is the listener to this show. And so, I look at what you've done on Twitter, and you started in like self-improvement, and you went to relationships, and then you became writing was kind of your niche after that. But through all of those, you were teaching things, right? And you're a teacher in a past life as well, college educator. And so you were using like these skills that you had in the real world to create content and stay in that same zone and that same expertise that you had. Like, what are some ways that people can like hone in on the things that they're doing in real life and find ways to create content and find a niche?
That's a really good question. Because I don't want to give a cop out answer here and just be like, oh, I just knew, because that's just not helpful at all. I think about it as what are transferable skills, and then what domains do you have to apply them. So some people would look at me being a teacher before for like 7 years and be like, oh, you just taught for 7 years and then left and became a creator. Like you must feel like you wasted those 7 years of your life. It's like, well, not really. Like people always ask me like how I was able to create so much success in a 1 year time as a creator. And it's like, well, I skill stacked for like 10 years before that. I practiced public speaking. I practiced writing. I practiced like clarity of thought, like thought leadership in general, how to hold a room. Like I didn't practice marketing as much. That's been one of the things I've really had to struggle to learn, is the more marketing side of the skills. But I would ask anyone who wants to just pivot maybe online or into the creator economy, what skills do you have that are transferable to what you're doing next? And how do you just like share that and like leverage them in new and unique ways? So instead of looking at your life in terms of occupation, where it's like, I am a teacher, now I am a creator, you just look at yourself as like, what skills have I acquired and what are the different ways that I can actually use those skills? Like even storytelling, someone might say like, oh yeah, you can like sit around and tell a good story. It's like, okay, well, you might be really good on podcasts. You might be great for like taking maybe abstract concepts and explaining them better. You could be a good marketer because you can figure out how to sell products through storytelling. Like look at all the different domains. Like those are just three I came up with off the top of my head for one skill. There's so many examples of this. So I would say look at the skills you have that are transferable, and if you don't feel like you have any skills yet, try to develop or put effort towards developing transferable skills like writing, marketing, sales, speaking, building influence, capturing attention. Like all of those things are extremely transferable across so many domains.
Yeah, it's a very interesting framework. And I'm trying to like, as you're talking, I'm trying to apply it to myself. Like, cause I didn't take that approach where it's like, what skills do I have that I could make content with? It was more like, it just kind of fell into place. All the things that, I ended up doing. But I think that I was a marketer at a lot of companies. And so now all of a sudden I'm like teaching about content and about storytelling and about, I was a speaker, and here I am doing a podcast. So I think I unintentionally did some of that. But I think for people that are struggling to figure out exactly how they're going to create and what they're going to create, do some introspective work and just say, well, what have I done to this point? Right? Like, what have I accomplished? We've all accomplished things. What experiences do I have? Whether that's just telling your story or it's the ways in which you tell your story, try to share that the best that you can. And you've actually developed a content framework that I thought was brilliant, that can really help a lot of people from a tangible perspective, which is the feel this, do this, done this. Can you kind of walk us through that and how people can create content using that?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So I gotta say, this is maybe a huge weak point of mine as a marketer. This is where my co-founder like totally trumps me big time. Is I'm more of a logical thinker, or like, and I like things based on analysis. Like they need to make sense. So when I go on Twitter and I look at stuff, to me, I'm like, is that useful to me and what I'm building right now? And if not, I just like don't care about it, which is a lot of the internet. So whenever I go to make content, I project that value. So I think that everything needs to be logical, it needs to make sense, it needs to be very tangible. But when you look at a lot of what goes viral on the internet, it actually has nothing to do with logical value. Like you look at stuff that just totally pops off, like cat memes and stuff, and you're like, how are cat memes just always going viral? How are like OnlyFans chicks always going viral on TikTok? And you're just like, none of this makes any sense because it doesn't improve your life. But that was where one of my mentors sat me down. He's like, what you don't understand is that viral content is emotion based. You're analyzing it from a logical side, but viral content has to appeal to someone's emotion, like to a desire, or just like make them feel good. It's a vibe, is how he describes it. And like there's a post I seen go viral a little while ago. It was when the Nike movie came out on the Air Jordans. Someone posted like Nike's rules or like company values or company rules or something on the timeline. It just totally popped off and went viral. And it's like it's a vibe. Like it's not the most helpful thing in the world. You're not going to read that and your like entire value hierarchy is going to shift. But you read it and you're like, that's cool. Or like Julian Shapiro with Christopher Nolan's plot map of Inception. He posted that and he's just like, this is a cool little thing I found. And I looked at that. I'm like, that is so freaking cool. Like it's just a total vibe. So that's when it clicked for me that content that goes viral has to evoke some kind of emotion. And like it might seem logically like it's really stupid, but if it does instill some kind of emotion, it will do quite well. So that's the feel this part of the equation. That's what you use to like grow and build followers. And then when you're building a personal brand, you can't just build stuff off of those frameworks because then your brand is kind of hollow. It doesn't have any like tangible value for you to monetize in the future or to build off of. So that's where I brought in like the do this, done this. Do this is like the actionable tactical advice you can give. So for me, it's like writing tips. And then people follow me like, oh, I trust what he has to say. He's got expertise. He's a writer, but he also can evoke emotion. And then done this is when you're trying to convert to sales and you're showing case studies and that your actionable advice actually does work within the real world. And that is how I've found even ghostwriting for clients to get the most amount of sales is you need like testimonials, transformations, proof that stuff works. So that's how I think about content now. It's not always like a black and white. It's often a blend or like a gauge between those three. So it's better to look at it like a bar graph with multiple levers. But I found that to like understand and learn content, that was how it clicked for me.
And I think a lot of different people I have seen a lot of like three pillar approaches, and everyone kind of has their own little way to compartmentalize the different types of content. I think what's really important is that you come up with your own as a creator. Like come up with a way that it's like, I need to touch on this part of my life, this part of my life, and this part of my life, or this part of my brand, etc. So it's like you're showing expertise, you're doing stuff that's educational or entertaining that could go viral, and you're showing proof that you're out there and you're doing stuff yourself, and some combination of that is really important. Because when you look at your favorite influencers, think about it, they're showing all these different aspects of their life and their specialization. Now you have really taken like a lot of the stuff that you've done and had a lot of success, frankly, from your agency perspective in a very short amount of time. One thing that I want to ask you about, and this is selfish because I am going to be spinning up a content agency of my own, is how you think about pricing. So like to you, what is the difference between like a $2,000 offer and a $10,000 offer on a package? Because a lot of the stories that I hear is like, well, I was charging this and then I just was talking to someone one day and I threw out this huge number and they said, yeah. So like, that's my new price. Or it's like, you know, is it so nascent of an industry with like the ghostwriting stuff and the online personal branding that it's like, you can kind of just feel people out? Is it about like, just say what you are willing to pay? Is it what is specifically in the package? Like, can you walk me through some of the psychology behind the pricing models?
Yeah, there's a few things to consider with this one. So when I first started in ghostwriting, it was a lot less commoditized than it is now. I think at that point it was only like four or five of us who were really doing it well, and there was a lot less competition. So when it came to closing clients, there was a lot more walk away power because people felt like, oh, there's only a couple ghostwriters. If we don't go with like one of these guys, we're going to get stuck with like some crappy 20-year-old like marketer, right? So it was a lot easier to throw out like crazy Hail Mary prices. Nowadays, the really high prices I've found are only accomplished in, I'd say maybe like three ways or a combination of three ways. And I hope I can remember them all while I'm explaining them. So the first one is if you are including a lot of different services. So let's say that you go, I'll charge 3K for Twitter, but then I'll also repurpose it for LinkedIn. That's an additional 1,500. We're going to want to have distribution. That's like $1,000. I'll write your newsletter. That's $1,000. And I'll repurpose everything for Instagram and get Instagram distribution. It's like 12K. So like, that's one way you can get really crazy amounts, but you do have a lot of services to fulfill on. So that'd be way number one. Number two is if you have a really strong defensible brand with lots of walk away power, you could literally just throw out Hail Marys and be like, I only take two or three clients at like $20,000. If you want like me to write your content, that's the price. But that stuff, it takes a long time to get there. Like I noticed Julian Shapiro recently started a design agency and he goes, I take on one client at a time. That's it. Hit me up if you're interested. I'm like, holy shit. That is like some big brand, like baller play right there, where it's like one person at a time, it's a lot of money. And he's just like, has a wait list. And he's just like, nope, that's all we do. We just take on one at a time, do it really well, move on to the next one. Like, that's really dope. So if you have a really big brand, you can do that. Like a Danco or Dakota could probably do that. The third way to get a lot of money, I'm trying to remember, what was my third one? I don't know if I even remember the third one. This is exactly what I was worried about was going to happen. Say those are the two most common ones. What would be the third way to get a lot of money out of service?
Well, I'm kind of coming at you with like putting you on the spot with all these questions, but like those are really interesting. I'm curious, like with the first one, is there a risk with like giving people a menu of options where they could be like, oh well, like I don't want this one, so like cut 1,000. I don't want this one, or is it better to just like say this is the like there's two packages, you get this or you get this? Like, is there a flexibility that you think is important as a service provider?
I think less options is better for service-based businesses. I've just found the more wiggle room I have, like the more that clients really try to negotiate with you, and your offer just doesn't seem as solid. I really look to someone like Marcos Ruz, who I think is doing ghostwriting correctly, and he actually found a way to niche into it. I was very impressed when I looked at his landing page. He goes, I help founders who sell info products scale to seven figures through social content. And his guarantee, if I remember correctly, is you make more money than you pay me per month or we don't work together. I'm just like, fuck, that's a good deal. That's a really good offer. It's niched, it's simple. I've heard him in like other people's chats. I've been chatting with him personally, like other people's calls, where he's like, if they're not selling info products, I don't take them on. They need to have like a certain set of criteria, and this is the price that it is. There's no negotiation, and he's doing very well. I think that's a very smart way to do business and a smart offer. I've toyed around with like different offers and having more flexibility, and I find it's better just to have like one or two or even three options, seeing what people go with, and then if they ask as like upsells or maybe after month one, they're like, "Hey, Twitter's going really well. Yeah, we could actually just repurpose this over to LinkedIn. Like, what do you think about that? Oh yeah, like how much would that be? Oh, an extra 1,500. Okay, cool. Like I found that that's how it's usually happened for me is not getting it on the front end, but upselling on the back end after like a month or two of good results.
Interesting. Yeah. And that kind of plays into the idea of like giving maybe a free trial as well. Like, hey, for 2 weeks, I'll do it. And then if you like it, this is the price. And it's like you do such good work they kind of have to take it because now they're used to having that content and that growth. And the guarantee is like the big thing, right? It's like everyone has this a special guarantee. So it's like, what can you really bring to the table to promise people? Because when you told me the Marcos Ruiz kind of hook there, that was the thing that got me, and I'm sure got a lot of clients. You've obviously, like I said, done well with the agency, but there is like this interesting intersection between making a lot of money and living happily, right? And so you had a thread that went viral like a couple of weeks ago, and it started something along the lines of, "I made 60 some odd $1,000 last month, but I hated every second of it." And I also heard you once talk about an entrepreneur that approached you, and basically he has scaled these businesses before, and he's like, "Hey, we can take your agency to $1 million a month. Like, let's do this thing." And you thought about it and you said no. And so I would love for you to talk about opportunity cost and kind of what it takes to build a lifestyle that you actually want when you have a lot of money being thrown at you as kind of a distraction.
Yeah, I think it's important to actually set a mark of the lifestyle that you want. Because there are some people who love just like working their ass off, like 20 hours a day. Like there was this one ghostwriter I debated on partnering with when I got offered that $1 million per month like opportunity at scale. And he was fucking stoked. He was just like, let's do it. I'll get up every day. I'll work 20 hours. Like that would be the sickest thing in the world. And I was sitting there and I'm just like, hell no, dude. Like the amount of clients, the amount of risk, the amount of systems. Like I just have like personal markers that I evaluate for businesses. Okay, first off, what's the time commitment? Second off, do I enjoy the work itself? Is it something I want to be like working on? Three, do I enjoy the people I'm working with? Four, am I learning a lot? Five, what's the risk? Like, and when I looked at agency work, I think agency scale has what I call a linear risk profile, or no, an exponential risk profile with a linear profit margin, which I don't like. So, for example, let's say you're a small agency of like 4 people and you can scale to like 20 clients. Well, now when you go beyond that, every time you add a client, you need more people to work for you, and it like that's how it scales. So as you get more clients, you need a bigger staff, but then you become reliant on lead gen for more clients, or you have to have very low churn because you have staff to pay. So it becomes this like really risky house of cards where you scale up, and then if maybe one key team member leaves, well, who's going to fulfill for all those people? It's like, well, fuck, now you got to drop everything and you got to do that. So like that's, I don't like the volatility of the risk in that perspective. When I compare it to something like info products, where you just like, it's a labor of love, you just make it as good as humanly possible. Maybe you run a cohort for 1 or 2 months or even 3 months, or you just like release it like Kieran Drew did with high impact writing, and you just like make a bunch of money with the product, and then you're just kind of like helping people and servicing people. There's no like house of cards where if like a couple people quit, you're screwed. I prefer the cohort models of working kind of like a lion would feed, where you like you go and expel a bunch of energy and you hunt, and then you like come back and rest. So you work for like 4 or 5 months, like work your ass off, run a cohort or a product, and then you rest for like 3 or 4 months, recollect, and then you like go back and do it again. You work in bursts throughout the years. So I would say that was my like biggest thing when determining what kind of lifestyle do I want. Like, do I want to be slaving at this agency all day? Or do I want to build something where I can just like work in bursts and like put my whole heart and soul into it, and then maybe work a bit more casually after that? And that more fits my style and my vision for what I want to do with my life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree. And it kind of manifests itself a lot of times as like B2B versus B2C almost, where it's like the service based stuff. A lot of times you're working hands on with clients or other businesses because that's high ticket offers. And like you said, like there's just this added complexity when you're dealing with people internally. It's like, well, we need to add more people to serve more clients. But if you're dealing B2C and you're trying to just attract, you know, and then get back to the personal brand, is like if people know you for you, you can then sell to the people, and then you just can have like a one-time product. Or I mean, you can iterate and create new products, but the idea is like you can have a single product that you can sell to infinite people and not have to actually scale up internally and take on those complexities. You look at guys like Dan Coe and like Justin Welsh promoting this like solopreneur lifestyle. And so that brings me kind of to my next question around, monk mode, right? And I spend a lot of time alone. I actually moved to Phoenix from LA because I had like a big social circle and I had a lot of things, a lot of options on a day to day basis. And I was like, this is about 2.5 years ago. And I was like, I just want to clear my energy. I want to move somewhere where I don't really know anybody. And I just want to hunker down and figure out the direction that I want to go. And I'm curious how you think about like spending time alone and working really hard on something, but then integrating back into society with like all those skills or with that product or service that you developed coming out of that. Like, what does that dichotomy look like to you? Like, and like monk mode versus collaborating and integrating.
Yeah, the more I've thought about monk mode, I like it to some degree, but I also think it solves the wrong problem. This is where I'm coming from with this though, is in my 20s, I always struggled from like emotional volatility. That's what I call it. So I'd be around people and they'd be like, hey, let's go do this thing. And then I'd be like pulled by the environment of these people to go do it. Maybe I'm going out for like dinner, I'm going out for drinks, I'm going to a beach, I'm not putting in the work. Where when I'm monk mode, I'm just like getting up, there's no distractions, I'm just working. Now I think that the two are quite extreme, and I'm trying to work towards like what is a lifestyle where I just have enough autonomy and control over myself to get up and do the things I want to do every day and say no to all those distractions. And then when it's time, or I feel like, hey, I'd really love to go celebrate or like go do something, like I just feel I need that, then I allow myself to go and like have some fun and like live a little. And it's just coming back more to like processes and habits now. Like I'm realizing that there is no like destination where you just make all this money and you're done, because we're humans, we always have to be growing. So my thought is, why not just try to set up your life as a series of processes that you'll just do every day till the day you die? You just fill like different things within the slots. So you get up and you work for 4 hours a day. Maybe right now it's on your creator business. Maybe 2 years from now it's on a different business. Maybe years from that it's like on some crazy business, or it's you learning a hobby because you've like cashed out your business. But those habits and those hours are always going to be allocated to some level of growth. I think the thing that you're working on just changes. So I'm trying to look at it more that way now, less extremist. Like, okay, I'm monk mode for 3 months, and now I'm just like a potato, just having fun and drinking for like 3 months. I'm trying to be like, where's the day to day process where I can just like have my cake and eat it too? And I think it is possible with the right habits.
Yeah, and I think it goes like the deeper you are in your journey, the more the ability you have to kind of just be like, all right, here are my fundamental building blocks, but I want everything to be like semi integrated and free flowing. Whereas I do think that some level of like intense alone time, whether you call it monk mode or whatever you want, like kind of shutting out the rest of the world and building and learning by doing by yourself is really important early on. And so, you know, taking me through your journey a little bit, like you had like you've also talked about this kind of like this journey that the solopreneur goes through so far. And we were only really like 3 or 5 years into this, like kind of watching people do it. I feel like you're like that second wave, right? And then there's like third wave creators like me and others that are like trying to learn from you. And it's like you build the high value skill that you can teach people. And then you like offer a high ticket service around that skill. So you're like making money off of businesses, but also like teaching people and building your personal brand. And you can leverage that personal brand into some coaching. And then you can maybe like pick a direction you want to go from there that scales everything, whether it's like building a software or expanding your agency, different things like that, cohorts. I heard you say once that you might, you've only been in this game for a little bit, but you've done so well and you're a lifelong learner that you might already kind of be done with ghostwriting, or like you kind of see the exit. Like, I think you have a CEO that you might have already brought into the agency to take some of the day-to-day stuff away. Like, I'm curious what's next for you. Like, what are you really excited about? Even if you're not stepping away tomorrow, like what are some of these like ambitious business goals that you're looking at?
Yeah. So what you referred to is what's called like the ladder of wealth, and you nailed it. Like that tends to be the step of how people evolve throughout the ladders of wealth. And I think I'm fortunate that I used to be a college teacher and teach people how to learn, that I'm able to learn quite quickly. I have like frameworks and principles that work well. And ghostwriting, I picked it up pretty quick, scaled the agency pretty big, at least to like the place that I wanted. And I'm at the point now where I have to make a decision. Like, do I continue to scale this agency and really focus on that? Or is it time to pivot to the next thing? And my heart's telling me that we're not done with the ghostwriting yet. We still want to like service clients. We want to build relationships, and there's still skills that I can acquire there. But I do want to move into what I call decentralized education. I think having a teaching background, it makes a lot of sense. And one thing that people don't talk about with service based, I learned this from Alex Becker a little while ago, is once something becomes a really easy way to make money, it just gets flooded by the market. And this usually happens with service based businesses that have a cap of about $1 million a year. So ghostwriting is a fantastic example. Is everyone's like, holy shit, you can make like 50K a month ghostwriting. And when I first started doing it, it was like Dakota, me, and like two other people. Now, like I just look at the average profile on Twitter and it's like 50K per month ghostwriter. I'm like, holy fuck, it's already happening. We're like we've commoditized this industry. So now I'm asking myself, where could I move to in terms of business that is harder for more people to get into, requires more skills that are harder to learn, and where I have a personal like edge from my experience and my personality. And I think it's education, because very few people have 7 years of teaching experience to distill the things that like they're learning and share them in this way. And I also think building a personal brand is very hard. And where some of these ghostwriters might have grown like decent big like Twitter followings, I don't look at them as brands. I don't think they have like the Danco flavor where I'm like, Danco is a brand. Like Justin Welsh is a brand. And I don't think I'm there yet either, but I'm starting to focus more on the personal brand aspect and moving into avenues where there's less competition. I think I can basically take more of the market's overall share.
When you're talking about education, you had mentioned Kieran Drew's product, the high impact writing that just came out and did so well. Is that like something that you might consider where you're like teaching about writing through a course, or would it be like teaching something else completely, do you think?
I would like to teach writing and probably personal branding and some other things. I'm still exploring with the unique angle because, you know, if you just do a writing course, there's only so much money that you can make. There's like a market cap. So what are the outcomes and the transformations that different people want? And what are like what's an area in the market that no one's really talked about yet? Like Dickie Bush has a writing cohort. Dakota's got a ghostwriting cohort. Dan's got like the 2 hour writer. Like Kieran just did high impact writing. I'm like, maybe there's room for me to do like something to do with writing in here. Maybe not. I don't know. But I do think my future in some way is in decentralized education, whether it's like a cohort, a writing product, or a community that actually just distills all of this down, similar to Dan Coe's digital economics, but just from a different perspective with different information.
Okay, so I guess that kind of begs the question. When you say decentralized, my brain immediately thinks about the blockchain and Web3. Uh, is that, well, let's just put it this way. One of the things that you always wanted, I know, is a Lamborghini. And so my question to you from that crypto side of me, I want to know when Lambo.
Oh man, I ask myself this question all the time too. Um, I originally wanted to get it before I was 30, and I was like, I think I can do it. And then I was talking to my girlfriend, and she's like, "You're an idiot. Don't do it." And I'm like, "She's totally right." I don't know when I'll get it, but I want it to be something that it just like makes sense when I get it. Like maybe I do some kind of business exit or I do a big drop or something and I make like, I don't know, $2 million on a drop. Or like maybe one year I make like $3 million. You know, Dan Coe's what, 3 or 4 years into his journey and he's estimated to bring in like 2.5 mil this year. So I look at his journey and like, hey, if I follow similar steps and I make the right moves, maybe that's possible for me with the proper execution. So maybe a couple of years from now, I'll have so much money in the bank that I'll say, you know what? I know this is a dumb purchase, but I'm in my early 30s and I'm going to buy that Lamborghini cash. I'm not going to lease it. I'm not going to do like, this is going to be like something that I buy for me. I know it's stupid. I know it's emotional, but this is just me rewarding myself with my dream car. And that's like, that's it. I'd live in like an apartment and drive a Lamborghini. Like I don't need the house. The Lamborghini will be my thing. So I don't know. Maybe in my 30s, depends on how the trajectory of my life goes. We'll see.
Maybe that's part of the main story, where it's like you have to complete those childhood dreams. And I know you're going to get it. It's a lock for me. Like just as an outsider watching you, I am personally really inspired by you. Just watching the way that you've kind of navigated a lot of different industries really quickly and found your niche and found your voice and found a gold mine, frankly, that you have leveraged in a way that you take a very kind of balanced approach to the way that you look at life. It's not all about the freedom. It's not all about the money. It's not all about the relationship. you kind of have found a way to bring all those together, and you're not even 30 yet. So I'm really grateful you came on the show, man. I'm really happy that, we're starting to build a relationship. I'm a big fan, and I just can't wait to see what you do next. So if you could just let everybody know, where they can find you online, and if there's anything else you want to promote.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, man. The words mean a lot. I'm gonna like tear up here, honestly. It's when you're in the trenches all the time, and like, from the outside looking in, it's cool to hear that somebody can say that, because it's a grind, and there's a lot of bad days, and there's a lot of self-doubt. I didn't really understand that when other people said it. It sounds trite. There's a lot of days you're like, can I even fucking do this? So it is cool to hear that. It's very inspiring and motivating for me. Where you can find me, Twitter at Taylin Simmonds. It's going to be expanding to other platforms soon, but I don't know, right now I'm very like Twitter focused. So I'd say that's the main place.
Thank you, Taylin, for coming on. I really appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, appreciate you for having me, Greg, and wish you were coming on the retreat with me next week, man. Maybe in the next one.
Hope you enjoyed that episode. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. The bigger it gets, the bigger the guests, which means more valuable conversations for you. Also, make sure to check out the Pointing Up email list in the description to get early access to new episodes, plus exclusive answers to questions I ask the guests that don't make it into the show. See you soon.